So today's lesson is about eco-cosmology, and before we understand specifically about eco-cosmology, we must understand what is cosmology. What do we understand by cosmology? Now, broadly speaking, can be understood as a way of understanding the world. Now, human beings as a species have this particular character or the property which they have acquired over the period of evolution of reflective thought. That is, they can think, or they can think beyond things that are immediately seen or felt by them. That is beyond the material world, beyond the immediate experience. They want, and they have always been, right from the proto-human stage, because even amongst the Neanderthals who were proto-humans, there we have burials. Now, burials means that the Neanderthals also had some conceptualization. When we say conceptualization, it is a cognitive thing. It is nothing to do with what is in front of us, but it goes beyond what is in front of us, where humans have this ability to imagine things, to construct things that are beyond the immediate sensory world. So, if the Neanderthals were having burials, it means that they had some understanding of the afterworld, because burials and death rituals are related to some understanding that there is life after death. Otherwise, there is no meaning to burial or to burial death rituals. So, this conceptualization of the afterworld, which nobody has seen, nobody has sensed, yet it is predominant amongst all human cultures and society. This is what we call as cosmology. How human species, through their culture, through their life in society, have constructed a world which is through an entirely mental processes of imagination and construction. Now, as we know, culture is something which is a collective. It is something which belongs to an entire society, to a region or group, a ethnic group, a tribe, sometimes even at a broader level, we can say at the level of a nation. So, but it is always a collective, and this collective consciousness is something which again is a very integral part of the human species. And through this collective consciousness, this construction of the cosmology is also triggered by something. Why do humans have a cosmology? Why do they imagine things beyond the realm of immediate experience? Why do they construct a world? Because we live in a world that is constructed. It is not the world that only we can see and we can feel, we can touch, we can hear or smell. We have the feelings of belonging to a much broader reality. And this is the cosmology, and it comes about because humans, from the beginnings of their existence as a human species, have wanted to answer certain fundamental questions. Humans are the only species probably who think about what is life, what is existence, how are the other parts of what we see around us related to us. That is, if I am a human, how am I related to the trees, the flowers, the stream, the water, the animals, the environment, to other humans? So these questions need to be answered. And if we look at the beginnings of we cannot look, but we can imagine, and that what ancient human beings must have thought about when they looked around themselves. They must have seen the stars, the moon, the earth, the rains, the all the different nature changing its course, day coming, night, then people dying and people being born. Now this people dying or everything dying and then being reborn, this is a very unique experience, or to which there is still no answer. But every culture, every society has constructed some answers to this. They have constructed some answers to this through their imagined cosmology. And it's not that cosmology is entirely imagined. It is part existence, part our, experience of the world around us, and partly it is constructed. The question, the cosmology then consists about then again, human beings have also been very conscious about power that is around them. Some things have power, some things grew, some things are stronger, some things have more vitality. And here again came certain questions. How come? How come some individuals are strong, some individuals are weak, some have more capacity to learn? So, fundamental questions about why day and night change, why the seasons come and go, what is time, what is existence. So, all this was encompassed within the concept of cosmology, which is collectively held in any society by the people who share a particular culture, a worldview. Roy Rapoport, an anthropologist, had used the term cognized environment. Now he divided the environment. Well, now what is environment again? Environment is something that surrounds us. It includes not just nature, not just living, non-living beings. It also includes other human beings, and also not every part of the environment is directly seen, felt, but yet every culture across the world has an idea, has a construct about the unseen, the unknown, which we say, for example, people have belief about God, belief about spirits, belief about existence, which is also varies from culture to culture, because people live in different environments, people have evolved differently. So since culture is historical, people have different cosmologies. Like for example, I worked on the Bhautiya pastorals on the upper Himalayas, and they consider that part of side of the mountain that is facing the sun is something special, and the water, any stream that exists in that side of the mountain is considered as sacred and is considered as the abode of the snake god. Now this is a belief. But all these beliefs, all these constructions have also been supported by what we call as age-old narratives, stories. And these stories are known as mythologies. These mythologies tend to rationalize the beliefs. Why such and such exists? Now everybody has a question, everybody needs an answer. So if I say something is sacred, then why? Why does the sun come out in the morning and go down in the evening? Why do the seasons change? Why are we created? Who are we? What is our relationship to other people? So all this is narrated in every culture in terms of stories which are known as mythologies, whose origin is not known, but psychologists have tried to relate the origin of mythologies to some ancient experiences, very deep buried in the past of human beings. So these myths are kind of explanations about the cosmology, and they are an integral part of these constructs. And the most important myths which are found in every culture, every religion across the world, are what we call as origin myth. That is something about the creation of the world. Now these creation myths are very important because this is through this creation myth most of the life is explained. For example, if you look into the book of Genesis in the Bible, it tells how human beings were created, who was created, how man was created, how woman was created, how were they, put into this world, and then God had put here other things like plants, animals for their use. So it is all told like that. Among Hindus, we have the Vedic myths about the sacrifice of the Purusha, the origins of the Varnas, the social hierarchies. So all of what exists in society in terms of the organization of the society, in terms of who is to be worshipped, who are the gods, and some reasons about gender relations. For example, according to the book of Genesis, woman has been given an inferior status. So the religion professes some kind of patriarchy, though of course these things have also been contested. Similarly, through the Vedic myths, the social hierarchies of caste have been constructed and justified. So myths are also there to justify. Even when we have a ritual say like Raksha Bandhan, then there is a myth behind it, that why this thing is done in this way and what is the rationale of doing it. So myths in a way provide a rationale to the cosmology. Now cosmology is also used by science, especially for space and all, to understand, because cosmology also refers to space, cosmos, where we live, the entire space, the context of the whole universe. That is also called cosmos, and in science it is called cosmology, the study of space. But when we come to social science, when we come to culture, cosmology is the construct, the entire structure of beliefs about life and existence which is shared by a particular culture. Now, within this culture, within this cosmology, a very important dimension is the relationship of humans to non-humans, and that is what we call as eco-cosmology. How is the environment around us related to human life and living and society? Now we know the ancient cosmologies in the ancient civilizations like in Egypt, in India, in Greece, all natural objects, and in India we still follow the same ancient beliefs that objects of nature, mountains, trees, rivers, even animals, they are treated as humans, as having life, as having consciousness, and also as quite often as sacred. Then concept of time. The concept of time can be linear or the concept of time can be cyclical. So concepts of time, concept of space are very integral part of what we call as an eco-cosmology, as well as the human relation, what we call as living, what is non-living, what is animate, what is inanimate. Now these are not uniform. We may think if we belong to a particular culture and we have a particular kind of cosmology, the stones are inanimate. But there are many cultures, many people who believe the stones have life. Amongst the Nagas of Northeast, stones are seen as living creatures who not only have life, they marry, they have children, they are just like humans. So many parts of the world, in the ancient world also, stones were seen as having life. Trees are seen as having life. Trees are seen as capable of movement. Then time. There are various ways in which time is conceptualized. The Australian Aborigine tribes of Australia, they have a concept of time which is in a way timeless. For them, time does not move. They have a concept of dream time, the ancient time when the world was created, and there the world got fixed. So for them, there is no movement, like the years don't pass, the life don't pass. People pass from one world to the other. The Sauras of Middle India, of Orissa, have no concept of death. They also feel that people simply pass from one world to the other, and where they live, where they marry, where they have children, and people move from one world to the other with ease. So the Sauras actually have no concept of somebody just going away and not coming back. In that sense, they don't understand death. But here a very important dimension is space. All this happens only in their own space. Now for the Australian Aborigines, time is timeless only in their territory, in their cosmological space. For the Sauras, there is no death only in their own space. For example, if a Saura comes to the city, that space is lost, that cosmology is lost. And this actually is very significant when we are talking of environment and ecological relations. For many people, the environment is not just a place to live. It is a space full of meaning. It is a space which has a lot of significance in terms of their lives, in terms of how they live, how they can hope to live. Like if a Saura is in his own place or she is in his own space in that particular forest, they know that their world is of a different structure, that there they can pass from one world to other. And if that is taken away from them, that it will mean that their entire cosmology will collapse. The whole significance and meaning of life will collapse. And then it becomes a very traumatic situation. So the relationship of a society to its natural habitat is mediated by what we can consider as a screen of meaning. What Rappaport had called the cognizanized environment. Cognizanized is how it is cognized, how it is conceptualized. It may not be the actual environment. A scientist, for example, scientists may say that there are no spirits in the environment, but there are viruses and bacteria. But for the people, there are spirits, but there are no viruses and bacteria. So there is a difference between what we call as the objective environment, if we believe in that particular framework, that is in the scientific framework. For many people, many social scientists and social philosophers, even that particular scientific framework is a particular kind of cosmology. And we cannot really say which is right and which is wrong, or which is true and which is false. Now, relating to the nature and considering the nature as human, having relationship with nature, considering non-humans to be ancestors, this is part of a cosmology where life, consciousness, a particular mode of thinking, or the capacity to have relationships is not seen as confined to humans. In other words, what we call as the difference of human and non-human does not exist in many kinds of cosmologies. A very important part of eco-cosmology is the sacredness or the value that is put on nature. Sacred groves, for example. Now, a sacred grove is not just a clump of trees. It is not just vegetation. A sacred grove is seen in its entirety. Now, this is the really important part of eco-philosophy, that things are not seen out of context. A sacred grove is not just a number of trees, plants, animals living together. There is an internal relationship where the totality is much more, and the totality is very different from these constituent parts. So, a sacred grove, to be sacred, has to be kept that way. It cannot be touched, it cannot be moved, it cannot be changed. You cannot say that, okay, I will replace one tree with another. No. The whole sacredness is in that relational, the spatial, the temporal structure. But if we look at the practical applications of these kinds of eco-cosmology, quite often we find that they operate to give rise to practices that are fundamental to the conservation of nature. That through these practices, and which are part or which are triggered by these cosmologies, we have been able to maintain certain, practical aspects, even if we look at it from the scientific point of view, like biodiversity. Now, a lot of work has been done on sacred groves in India and also outside of India, and it has been found that wherever these beliefs in sacred groves exist, the nature or environment undergoes much less degradation than either when, because of some intrusion of some external religion or because of conversion to some other religion, people give up these beliefs and they start saying that no, in my religion now I am a Christian or now I am a Muslim or whatever, and so I no longer believe in sacred groves, so I can cut these trees. So we find that immediately there is a great devastation, environmental devastation. It is not to say that all indigenous people have the same kind of beliefs, but what we know from the evidence of human evolutionary history, right from the time of being proto-humans to the modern industrial age, human beings had believed in the sacredness of nature. They had not believed that humans were at the center of the universe, and that cooperation, coexistence was very important, what Lewontin has called co-evolution. It is very important that species co-evolve for the subsistence or survival of all of them. So co-evolving, evolving together, sustaining each other, this has really been a key to evolutionary success. And this is how people lived. And these people who believe in environment, and this is how people live directly dependent on the environment. From hunting, food gathering, to foraging, to shifting cultivation, even agriculture, there is a direct dependence upon nature, and these kind of people who depend on nature have been called by Raymond Dasman in 1988 as the ecosystem people. This term ecosystem people was adopted by Indian environmentalists Madhav Gadgil and Ramachandra Guha to explain livelihood and survival of a majority of Indian people who live in the forests, who live in rural India, who live on the mountains. And these ecosystem people have an eco-cosmology that is very different from that of urban people, people who live in cities, people or that part of civilization or that part of human evolution where humans have evolved a particular kind of way of life or a cosmology that was shaped by the Industrial Revolution. That is when nature was mechanized, when nature was seen as an object, and when nature was seen as an exploitable resource. Nature was not seen as an extension of the human relationships, the human social relationships, human kinship relationships, human religious and sacred relationships, where people thought about animals as their kin, as their ancestors, where people thought that different parts of the environment was sacred, and they learned and they lived with them as they would live with other human beings. Now, Gisli Palsen has talked about three kinds of eco-cosmologies, three kinds of ways of understanding nature. One is called as Orientalism, the second is Paternalism, and third is Communalism. Orientalism is when we have a grossly exploitative relation, the kind of relationship that existed during the first phase of industrial capitalism. As we know from Indian history, for example, the maximum deforestation took place in India during the first initial phase of colonization, when the British East India Company came in only with an economic motive of exploiting India's resources. Gradually, that particular exploitative Oriental mindset or cosmology changed to paternalism or conservationist. Because if we go back to India, after the first phase, when there was total degradation of the forests of India, the indigenous, especially the Himalayan forest, the forest in the Terai region, the British suddenly realized that they were going beyond a point, that soon most of these resources are going to be depleted. So they took on what we call as a conservationist attitude, a conservationist cosmology, that our relationship with nature should not be totally exploitative, but we should try to conserve nature. But conserve nature for what? For our use. That is, it is still anthropocentric or human-centric approach, where the goals are seen as related only to the needs of the human, but it is like paternalistic. I will conserve, but I will conserve. It is like animal husbandry. Animals are herded, but they are only herded for human needs, to fulfill human needs. But they are taken care of for a purpose, and that purpose is always a human goal. The third, which is actually the one which is the oldest and the most persistent and surviving, is communalism. That is a relationship, a cosmology where humans are not at the center of the universe, where they are an equal part of the universe with all others. So since others are not more or less important than humans, everybody must learn to live together. And so this relationship should be cooperative and sustainable. So, if we follow this logic, which is also a logic, because cosmology is also a logic, it is a logic of life, how to live your life, according to how you believe what life is supposed to be. The main importance or the great significance of a cosmology is the way in which, because it is a kind, you can say it is an umbrella, it gives us a background against which human action and human needs also are located and evaluated. Our value systems, these are all conditioned by our cosmology. Like, for example, in India, where nature is considered sacred, we are often told that grain, food, it is sacred, it is Lakshmi. When I was growing up, my mother would say, never waste any food because food is Lakshmi. You should not touch food with your foot. You should respect food. You should try to conserve, try to not misuse it. There was a different kind of a worldview, a different kind of a sacredness, an attitude, a value that was associated with food. Because, as we know, in our rituals, we have first fruit in most parts of the world where traditional ecosystem people still live. Ecosystem people, as against what Guha has called, Gadgil and Guha have called the carnivores, the omnivores. The omnivores are people, are products of the capitalist economy, of the capitalist cosmology, which the eco-cosmology of capitalism, which says that nature is only a resource to be exploited. This is the worldview, this is a value system. And in this worldview, a value system where when we look at a forest, what we see are only trees that have certain monetary value. We immediately in our minds translate a natural object into its monetary compensation. This is how much a tree is going to fetch me in the market. This is what loggers and people who do poaching. Now, for poachers, an animal is not something that is sacred. An animal is not something that can be a kin, that can be your ancestor, but it is only something which in the poacher's market is going to fetch good price. In the Himalayan villages, I came across a beautiful cosmology where during a wedding, people would, they had some plants, growing some shrubs, very local, very part of that environment, who they considered as their kin, as their relatives. So whenever there was a wedding, they would bring that plant in a pot like they would invite a guest with great, respect and, reverence, that with an invitation that I'm inviting you to the wedding, so please come in and sit, take your seat, and they would give the plant a place and where it would be kept, nurtured and cared for throughout the wedding ceremony. Similarly, other and some animals, so they were all, invited to be part of the wedding ceremony as kin. Now, I was told that in that region, nobody kills a snake if not absolutely necessary. They would absolutely avoid killing a snake because they believe that their ancestors are born as snake. So the people were telling, if we kill a snake, how do we know that snake was not my father, that snake was not my grandmother? So this is a cosmology which is an eco-cosmology that does not put, like a wedge between the human world and the non-human world. This is an eco-cosmology that extends the web of kinship, social relationship to all around us. Now, if we live in a kinship-oriented world, our attitude towards or the values and the practices, specifically practices, are very different. Now, again, it does not mean that people who are ecosystem people are all vegetarians or they don't eat meat or they don't hunt or they don't kill, but they do it within a very different kind of a value system. They do it as if, like for example, most tribal societies, most tribal societies do where they hunt. They ask forgiveness of that animal whom they have hunted, and they say, look, I have killed you because I needed to eat, I need food, but please forgive me. And death rituals, as are appropriate to any human, are performed for the soul of that animal, so that the animal does not get angry or a soul does not come and haunt them. So you see, even that part, the very practical part, that we must eat to live, that is also done with a lot of reverence and a recognition of this kinship relation. Similarly, even digging the soil. Now, people believe that the earth is their mother or their kin, or they are related, they are born out of. So it is, they consider it is a hurtful thing that they are doing so. So to mitigate that, rituals are performed, sacrifices are made to the earth mother, forgiveness is asked before cultivation takes place. So all cultivation, all hunting, all subsistence activities which need to exploit, even if to a very small extent, some part of nature, this is done with the associated belief system that we are interacting with those who are conscious, those who are our relatives. And that is also the reason that minimum intervention, minimum invasion is practiced. Foraging societies. Now, foraging are the hunter food gatherers who do minimum interference with the natural environment. And because of this minimum interference, the relationship remains very stable. It doesn't, because you are using the forest maybe for, you are living in the forest for millions of years, but you are living there, you are still living there, the forest is still there. What does it mean? It means that this relationship has not been exploitative. It has not pushed the environment or nature beyond the point of sustenance. It has not pushed the environment beyond the point of sustenance. So, exploitation can only take place once we break this bond of emotion, of sentiment, of relationship. Now, as long as I feel that I am related, that I have an emotional, I have a sentimental relationship with the nature, with the environment around us, even people try to restrict even their needs to the minimum. Like they only wear the minimum clothes, they eat the minimum food, they use minimum amount of everything that is possible to eat only for their subsistence. They don't spend or create, huge cities or parks and whatever, their entertainments are very different. Their entertainment is walking with nature, not exploiting nature, but being with nature, admiring, or enjoying nature in its real sense, in the natural way. And in the exploitative mode, there is no end to exploitation. There is no end to the needs. As we know, we live in a consumerist world of infinite needs. And if our needs are infinite, if we are never satisfied with what we want, if we just want more and more and more, then we keep exploiting more. And we keep exploiting more because we have no sense. We don't think twice about cutting a tree. It doesn't look to us that we are destroying life. It is just an object that comes in the way of building a road, so cut it. We are not even asking forgiveness from the tree. If in the ecosystem people, even if they have to cut a tree, ask forgiveness, they perform a ritual. There is an emotional dimension to it. Once the emotions are gone, once the sentiments are gone, once the relationship no longer exists, when the environment becomes an object, then it also is, as we understanding it today, a self-destructive relationship. As Mahatma Gandhi, as I'll just end by saying, Mahatma Gandhi had said the most profound statement that there is always enough for everyone's need, but not for their greed. So this greed that has come in with this industrial technology, capitalist economy, this is actually a self-destructive kind of an eco-cosmology. Thank you.